From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Antigua and Barbuda's government has said that its exclusion from the visa renewal waiver with the U.S. is based on its support for Venezuela. The waiver would eliminate the need for citizens to pay in-person visits to the U.S. Embassy in Barbados in order to renew visitors' visas. The government isn't ready to buckle because of the support they've received from Venezuela since 1974. Venezuela also helped to transport Barbudans to Antigua after Hurricane Irma last year. The cabinet says the United States is an important ally, but they're not going to abandon their friends over visa concerns.
The cabinet determined that it had to be as a result of the support of these three states for the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. But Venezuela has been exceedingly good to Antigua and Barbuda. Venezuela, as you know, forgave us $250 million worth of debt from the PDV. They reported that we could bargain with them over the inclusion of Antigua and Barbuda, but that bargaining would result in Antigua and Barbuda jettisoning the friendship with Venezuela.
Now, to get some more insight on this development, we're turning to our correspondent in Antigua, Gemma Handy. Gemma, as I understand it, interviews for those renewing their U.S. tourist visas had been waived. This new policy means that they've been reinstated, so Antiguans will now have to fly to Barbados, where the U.S. Embassy is based, for those interviews. Is that correct? And how is that being received throughout the island?
Well, actually, I mean, it causes considerable headaches and expense for people here to have to fly to Barbados to renew their visitor visas. It's fairly expensive. It's a few $100 US for a round trip. Just to put that into perspective, the minimum wage here is around $3 US an hour. So in addition to the time, it's also quite costly as well. People here are obviously not very happy about it. I think sentiment largely, they're in support of the government's position. Lots of people here have been very grateful beneficiaries of the support we've had from Venezuela. So, I mean, the opinion is a little bit mixed as well. Of course, people are also reluctant to do anything that sort of could upset the US and put us in bad stead with them too. So lots of differing opinions here in Antigua and Barbuda.
So there's a lot of uncertainty for the entire country. Is it possible, has the Antiguan government given any indication that they're going to still enter into negotiations with the U.S. to maybe sort of temper their hand on this? What, you know, can we expand a bit more on what the response from the government has been, especially since this is such a major inconvenience to the citizens of Antigua and Barbuda?
Yes, the Antigua-Barbudan government will be very keen to negotiate on this, I'm sure. It's not to say we won't still be approved, but as it stands now, there's only 3 remaining countries not approved, and all of them, as we know, showed support for Venezuela at that June OAS vote brought by the US.
Thank you so much, Gemma Handy. We've been speaking to our correspondent in St. John, Antigua, Gemma Handy. Now, Hurricane Florence made landfall near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. According to the National Hurricane Center, the storm hit with an estimated maximum winds of 144 kilometers per hour. Fortunately, Florence was downgraded to a Category 1 storm. Heavy rain and flooding have inundated some areas, and thousands are without power.
Wind and waves are driving seawater through some coastal streets like rivers. Nearly 30,000 people in North Carolina already are without power, and that number is rising. I believe that we have the resources we need to meet this crisis. We know, though, that we are in the early days and that we are going to need significant resources for cleanup and recovery.
Tropical Storm Isaac has weakened further and is now a tropical depression. It spared the Caribbean despite warnings that it could have brought widespread destruction. The eye of the storm passed over Dominica around midday on Thursday. The Prime Minister reported no deaths, injuries or damage to property. As a result, the state of emergency was lifted at 9 p.m. Thursday instead of noon Friday. Public officials should be returning to work as usual. Students, however, still get to stay at home.
Thank all the residents and citizens and the thousands of people out in Dominica who interceded on our behalf for this storm. The fact is, for several days, this storm was coming straight to Dominica. It wasn't moving down, it was moving up, and one can only thank the Lord for sparing us.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley says the Caribbean was lucky this time, but they cannot continue to rely on luck. And that's why she's pushing other nations, as well as her own, to do more to combat climate change.
Water technology for almost 50 years. And now we intend to be one of the first examples of how carbon neutrality and climate resilience can be achieved across an entire economy. We intend to reassert ourselves on every international front we can engage to combat climate change, because we are in a fight for our own existence. Indeed, it is for that reason that we have set 2030 as the target for us to have a fossil fuel-free economy.
And on the other side of the world, Super Typhoon Mangkhut hasn't made landfall in the Philippines, but it's already bringing strong winds and rain. Thousands have been evacuated, but there are still an estimated 5.2 million residents in its path. Winds could reach up to 205 kilometers per hour. Businesses and schools are closed as people wait to ride out the storm. And staying in Asia, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is in China to discuss political and economic cooperation. Maduro was invited by the President Xi Jinping. President Maduro laid a wreath in honor of the Chinese Revolutionary General Mao. He's already met with China's Foreign Minister and the head of the National Development and Reform Commission. The two nations have signed multiple agreements, according to the President who addressed the Commission.
Today, we will sign 28 accords. They ratify our commitment to shared development, to investments worth billions of dollars, to mixed ownership industries in the areas of oil extraction. We are moving forward in these matters, and together we will reap the rewards. We are also developing new partnerships in natural gas production to begin a new era in energy cooperation. We have forged new partnerships for gold mining. China is well aware we are on the way to confirming we possess the biggest gold mine in the world.
Esier Diaz is in Beijing with more.
Today, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro at the government headquarters in Beijing. Afterwards, both presidents welcomed advances in cooperation. Today, the leaders also took part in a ceremony where 8 accords were signed between the two nations out of a total of 28 that will be signed during this visit. The main areas of cooperation will be energy production, communication, aerospace, human resources, mining, and finances. Venezuela is also going to be part of projects within the Belt and Road Initiative, among other economic cooperation strategies. Both parties have agreed to use part of a $5 billion joint fund that was created for the oil production company Petrosumano. During a speech today, President Maduro highlighted the importance of the strategic alliance between the two countries.
34 Venezuelan migrants are home from Colombia as part of the Return to the Homeland plan. This group's story is similar to their compatriots who've already returned. They faced hardships they never imagined. Sometimes they slept on the streets. They've dealt with racism. Government officials have confirmed an increase in migrants going to their local embassies trying to get a ride back home.
I feel happy. We feel supported by the government, which is helping us to return, because we could not return on our own. We were unemployed and we were disparaged, just for being from Venezuela. Truly, we have met good people and bad people here, and maybe we were just unlucky. I have also run into many of my compatriots who are thinking about returning.
We have more from Paolo Fernandez in Bogota.
The group of 34 Venezuelan migrants who left Bogota under the Return to the Homeland plan have arrived in Bucaramanga after a 12-hour bus trip. Another 40 migrants are joining this group who will then make their way to Venezuela. The people on the trip have continuously expressed their gratitude to the government program that is allowing them to go home. They say they are happy to see their loved ones again.
An alleged pedophile has arrived in Bogota, Colombia, after being extradited from Venezuela. Known as the Bad Wolf, Juan Carlos Sanchez is accused of sexually assaulting nearly 300 children. He was arrested as soon as he landed in Venezuela. The abuse allegedly took place between 2007 and 2008. We'll take a short break now. More news in a few.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Bolivia continues to lead the charge for de-dollarization, a move against the power of the US dollar. We explain in this report.
Bolivia remains the leader in the de-dollarization on the South American continent, with figures nearing 100% of the national currency used for savings and transactions, according to the first semester economic report from the central bank.
We can proudly say that at this time, more than 98% of bank loans are made in our national currency, and more than 87% of deposits in savings accounts are also made up of Bolivianos. This is something that no other country in Latin America has achieved before.
A decisive factor in maintaining economic stability and a strong national currency is that exchange rates have remained under control. The dollar has cost 6 Bolivianos with 96 cents for the past 7 years.
Más del 98%.
Achieving and maintaining stability in currency exchange is one of the requirements for economic strength.
The stability of the national currency, the Boliviano, contributes to people's confidence.
While other economies have dollarization levels in the 50 to 60% range, Bolivia records nearly 0%, after suffering through dollarization levels of nearly 100% back in 2004.
These factors have made it possible to strengthen the economy. It is expected to be one of the fastest growing in the region, growing 4.4% this year alone.
We have registered the lowest inflation rate in South America. High growth and low inflation is a very difficult combination to achieve. But data from August shows that credit disbursed through the financial system to the population is the highest ever.
Another outstanding fact about the financial sector is its ability to maintain low interest rates. The interest rate at the Bolivian Central Bank is a mere 0.5%.
President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, inaugurated the headquarters of the Parliament of the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, in San Benito, Cochabamba. According to the president, the space will serve to carry out events that promote relations between the countries of the region. President Morales referred to the building as the Big House of South America. The structure is also expected to be used to host congresses, social organization meetings, and other activities. The foreign minister of Uruguay says negotiations between the Southern Common Market, known as Mercosur, and the European Union have stalled. Rodolfo Nin Nova warned that expectations for the meetings must be kept in check. Representatives from Mercosur met with EU officials this week in Uruguay. According to Nin Nova, regional issues complicated matters for mutual cooperation. In particular, he named the upcoming elections in Brazil and the change of government in Paraguay as stumbling blocks. And protests have taken place in Ecuador's capital, Quito, against President Lenin Moreno's economic policies.
Around 3,000 demonstrators marched in Quito to protest against the government of Lenin Moreno. Social movements, fishermen and various activists expressed their frustration at the austerity policies of the government.
What brings us here is the duty to defend the homeland. It brings us here to say no to treason, to say stop tearing the country apart, stop destroying the country institution, stop handing over the resources to foreign companies.
They have to explain what they did. If they made any deal with Chevron, as they seem to have done with Odebrecht, it is not only treason to the revolution and to the people, but to the country.
Earlier, dozens of supporters of former Vice President Jorge Glass gathered outside Jail 4, where he is imprisoned. They came to wish him well on his 49th birthday and reassert their support for him.
I'm disgusted at our judiciary because our justice system is blind. They have violated our rights and our leaders are being chased right now. We can't fight against the power of Lenin Moreno. That is why we are demonstrating today.
This protest is the latest in a series of mobilizations against Lenin Moreno's policies in Ecuador. In just the last couple of months, his government has increased the price of gasoline and closed more than 20 state institutions. His anti-immigrant stand on Venezuelan migrants has also been condemned. More and more people feel uncertain about their future.
Students and workers protested in Costa Rica on Thursday against the police invasion of a university. Thousands marched through the capital to condemn the police for violating the autonomy of the university and for beating up students. The protests are part of an indefinite strike against a proposed tax reform.
The student movement and the working class are not separate. We stand with the same fist raised against tax reform, against repression, for all of our rights that have been stolen. We have a common destiny to continue the movement.
The ministry, the government is unable to see this and see that this is one of the most determined civil protests in the country. They don't understand anything.
President Carlos Alvarado says he is prepared to talk, but only if the strike is called off.
I am clear that there needs to be an end to actions that compromise the peace of families and workers. The government of the Republic is open to dialogue, but will only do it when the strike ends and there is a climate of peace.
Presidential opinion polls in Brazil are showing a surprise shift. The presidential candidate for the Workers' Party, Fernando Haddad, appeared in first place in a poll published on Thursday by the pollster of Vox Populi. He was 4 points ahead of the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. Two other new polls put Haddad in second place, but gaining rapidly on Bolsonaro. And this comes just 2 days after the former president, Lula da Silva, endorsed Haddad as his substitute.
It has been traumatic, and we have to work on this politically. No one wanted this situation, but between giving up the project and repositioning in this way, we have decided, and Lula has decided to reposition ourselves in the race. As Lula said, we have a project, an idea. There is no point in stopping it, because someone will always follow the legacy, and the people will support it.
Meanwhile, right-wing candidate Jair Bolsonaro remains hospitalized. A statement from the Albert Einstein Hospital in Sao Paulo says Bolsonaro has been moved to intensive care after his latest emergency operation. In the meantime, the campaign continues. Ciro Gomes of the Democratic Workers' Party met with students, and Geraldo Alckmin of the Social Democratic Party of Brazil met vendors in Rio de Janeiro. And it has been 6 months since the Brazilian councillor Marielle Franco and her driver, Anderson Gomes, were murdered, and the case remains unsolved. Social movements, members of her party, her family and widow are expected to hold a vigil on Friday. They demand progress in the investigation and those responsible to be found and brought to justice. 6 months after the crime, the security minister acknowledged the police were involved.
It is a feeling of pain reinforced by a feeling of injustice. I am fighting to resolve the investigation with a right result. I don't want them to give us an answer just to close down the case.
And a team from UNESCO is in Brazil assessing damage to the National Museum after the September 2nd fire. They will help researchers sort through the rubble and ash to find salvageable artifacts. But much of the museum's collection, spanning centuries, has been lost.
We're thinking about covering part of the collection to protect it from rain. We are talking it over. You need to understand we are just beginning and we are establishing the necessary protocols to carry on with the work.
Time for the second break of this newscast. World News is next.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Spanish Parliament has voted in favor of moving the remains of the dictator Francisco Franco. Since his death in 1976, Franco's body has lain in a mausoleum capped with a giant cross in the Valley of the Fornal near Madrid. The right-wing People's Party and the Citizens Party both opposed the move, but the parties of the left, as well as Basque and Catalan nationalists, all voted in favor. Our correspondent in Spain has more.
Here, the exhumation of the dictator Franco is seen as good news. However, we must say that this is happening 40 years after the dictator's death. Also, it is relevant that right-wing Popular Party and Citizens Party have abstained from the vote, 164 abstentions and the 2 votes against by the Popular Party. They said those 2 votes were by mistake. 172 votes supported the exhumation. It is a first step in a country where historic memory is weak. For instance, the Francisco Franco organization still supports fascism openly, and the organization has received public funds. Meanwhile, there are still hundreds of mass graves around the country. Spain is second in the world in terms of the number of people disappeared.
And a series of explosions has shaken the city of Boston in Massachusetts, United States. 1 person has died and at least 10 people have been hospitalized. According to local reports, a rupture in a gas pipeline led to the explosions. A teenager was killed when a chimney came crashing through his car. Hundreds of residents had to be evacuated as emergency services continue to battle the blazes. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talistiatv.net/English. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talistia English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you so much for watching.